Hi, and welcome back to PatientRx. We are at the Sirius XM studios at the Wynn in Las Vegas. We're at Asembia Specialty Pharmacy Conference 2025, and I am your host, Jessica Krauser.
And I'm Tina Valb. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Chris. I actually met Chris last year at my nonprofit Tina's Warriors Hope Kit event. Since then, we have been good friends. And I'm going to let Chris introduce himself.
Great. Yeah. So Chris VanDenburg, I work for a company called HMP Global, specifically a group called Marin, previously called Proximity Health. So I'm a professional market researcher. And especially at an event like Asembia, which is really about the business of healthcare, I have to remember, and this is based on something that you said yesterday, Tina, that everybody here and in the healthcare industry, I believe, is well-intended and ignorant because we're human. We can't know everything. But with that responsibility comes the need to learn more, understand more, and make change. And in the spirit of being vulnerable, which you guys do on a daily basis, so thank you for all the efforts that you put in, I will admit, we talked to, in our group, 500 oncologists, oncology pharmacists, practice managers, medical and pharmacy directors from health plans across the country. Who are we not talking to?
The patient.
That's right. So that's why we're here, to understand the importance of why we should be talking to the patient. Mm-hmm. Why?
So that's a great question. And I love that we're going to be getting interviewed from a researcher. So get ready.
Yeah.
These questions are going to be,
this is different.
This might be tough and this could be different, but I'm excited.
Tables are turned today.
So, why the patient? We're the audience. We're the ones experiencing the things that, it's hard for us to even explain what we're experiencing, but everything that everybody is doing in their work within healthcare, no matter if it's working with data, doing something with IT, being the actual doctor or the payer, all of it is for that one person.
I'm going to echo what Jessica said. Everybody's existence is for the patient. And it's all the things that they sit around in a conference room, a boardroom, a policy meeting. It's talking about the patient, which is who you're looking at today, myself and Jessica. Mm-hmm. We are the patient.
Mm-hmm. So let me challenge that.
Yeah.
We hear at every single meeting, almost every single session, patient in the middle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're not the only one in the middle.
Yeah.
There are investors in public companies. There are nurses. Everybody in the industry is also in the middle, meaning that if we're going to, for example, reduce the cost of care, mm-hmm. healthcare, don't we all have to make less money? So my point is, especially at Asembia, where it's really about the business of healthcare, what are the goals that are getting in the way that's preventing even myself from focusing more on the patient?
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe I'm an optimist. I feel that if you do the right thing, then everything else falls into place, including the profit margins, including, having more sales or seeing more patients if you're a doctor. Mm-hmm. If you do the right thing, everything else should fall into place.
And I think too, there's also, even just looking at efficiencies, like, yes, there might be, everybody thinks, not everybody, but people might think, yeah, you have to scale back and make less money, but are we just not doing things the most efficient and effective way? Mm-hmm. I was just using this example with you earlier of, people with Parkinson's. There's a drug to disease interactions that there's a list for the hospital, but it's not well known. So you can go to the hospital, have this issue, and then you're in the hospital for 2 weeks longer than expected because a medication was given to you that shouldn't have been because of your disease. Now you've just increased costs. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So like I still mm-hmm. feel like there's things that we're learning by understanding the patient, but then also understanding the gaps, barriers, and processes within healthcare.
Yeah. So I feel that everything is so segmented,
Mhm.
and there's no cohesiveness around the different services. Maybe, some of the things that the manufacturer is doing, some of the things that maybe the health plan wants to do, some of the things that,
Mhm.
is a priority for a hospital system. I mean, I could go down the list. There's no cohesiveness, and we're not communicating to build one big ecosystem that has the positive benefit on a patient.
And I think what I'm hearing here is that if the voice of the patient were heard, that some of these problems might get solved by themselves. Like you'll
Right.
understand
Yeah.
that we don't
Yeah.
necessarily need this process for the patient because the patient doesn't even want that.
Mhm.
Or we need the card with the drugs that are going to interact with the Parkinson drugs
Right.
and keep you in the hospital for 2 weeks.
Right.
So is that the purpose of your organizations, to amplify the patient voice?
Absolutely. Yeah, we said that in unison because it is absolutely at the heart
Mhm.
of what Jessica does with her nonprofit. It's at the heart of what I do with my nonprofit, is amplifying the patient voice. And to get everyone to think differently before you make a decision. Think about our stories and the other stories that are out there. Factor us in to those decisions.
In fact, you've said many times that the patient should be at the table.
Yes.
At the table, and I think what you've said at the patient support program development, performance reviews of a hub, for example. What are all the tables that the patients need to be at?
Every single one of them.
Everyone that we
Top
could
three.
find. Pharma, health plan, physicians, the
Clinicals.
providers.
I mean, the setting
clin-
up the clinical trial itself,
Yes.
not being part of just the clinical trial, setting it up. What
Yeah.
type of method of the therapy is it going to be produced in?
Mhm.
I was talking to somebody earlier today. There's still a disconnect between the science and commercial. So the clinical side is doing all of this great work to bring a drug to market, but they have no idea what they have to go through with the payers. Or not they won't have to go through it, but the commercial side will. And so what's actually going to take, what's going to work, what's not going to work. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And I think that, especially around, we think about clinical trials, like this is just an example. Certain things will happen in a clinical trial, but by the time the product launches, even the packaging changes dramatically. And sometimes the packaging actually gets more difficult for a patient. And so I feel like some of the good things that they do through these phase 2, 3 trials should also get carried out into the real world. And, they want to get fancy around maybe packaging or even other things. And it just doesn't work. Sometimes simplicity is the best answer.
And sometimes it's having a seat at the table, not necessarily in a way that, we need to have some sort of voice in terms of our experience, but having it as a story so that you're making the right decisions. You're not just in a room on your own, talking about, I was doing this yesterday about serialization, DSCSA. It seems very far removed from the actual patient, but the decisions that they're making have a huge impact. So just having that patient's voice loud and clear to say the decisions you're making is going to impact this individual is significant.
So let's pretend you're at the table. Okay, so picture in your mind, you're sitting there at this table. There are people all around the table. What are 2 things that you think they must ask you as the patient?
The education materials, the packaging.
I think they need to know what my day-to-day is like and how drastically different it is.
And in terms of your day-to-day, in terms of the packaging and the education, what are 2 things that you would tell them?
I need education that's clear and concise versus in a more clinical, instead of the clinical version. I also need education for the caregivers. Uh, when I was going through my treatment and trying to explain to my kids the products and what it's going to do, I had a really difficult time. There simply was not a playbook around how to discuss some of these things with your kids. So I think really looking at that disease area, and if you have a younger demographic, then maybe you need caregiver support materials as well. And then as far as packaging, I've talked about this several times. I couldn't open blister packs, and that's a big consideration. My one daughter is on an asthma medication that's an injectable, and she literally cries every time she has to give it because the needle size is too big, and she's a skinny little thing. And so taking into account some of these things and is really important. Who is your end user? And can we make even small modifications that will increase that patient experience?
Mm-hmm. I think something I would want them to know is, again, I say like my day to day is different. But one day I can look like I don't have Parkinson's because of my physical, the physical nature of what it may be viewed as that day. The next day I can look like I'm flailing all over. The mental, emotional, all the internal impacts, that's what people don't see. That's what people aren't talking about. And to really expose those and to educate them around the fact that patients aren't really coming to the table talking about this because they're ashamed of having Parkinson's. A lot of times they don't want to give in to the fact that their disease is progressing, so that they don't talk about if they get, if they have hallucinations or what they're like or how they feel about it. They just don't talk about these things. So making sure that, I would be, somebody would be speaking on their behalf.
So have you found any particular stakeholder, group, caregiver, provider, some source that does listen to you the way you need to be heard?
I would like to think that is your provider, your doctor, but they're always rushed.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, at least I know I have been uncomfortable saying everything because I feel rushed. Honestly, support groups, being with other patients like me, that's where I feel heard and seen and understood much better than anyone within healthcare. I
100% agree with both sides. So I have a great relationship with my medical group in Ohio, and I have great support from them, but nobody truly understands, appreciates, or can support me like the others that are like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a group of women that we found each other just through social media, and we have a text message group, and we get it. We share stories, we share questions, we get answers that otherwise our physicians aren't giving to us. And then, I'd like to think even just that the Secret Life of Parkinson's podcast I have, that, we're not just a community for others, but I've been learning and getting support from so much of them. Mm-hmm. So it's that whole community of people that are like you.
Yeah. Chris, you bring up an excellent point about where do we feel comfortable. And what's unfortunate is Jessica said the same thing I did, right? It's the support groups. It's the others that have lived the experience like us. But nobody in the healthcare industry is connecting me to these support groups. We're having to find them on our own.
Or create them on
our own. And I ask the question all the time, whose responsibility is it? Is it the manufacturer that makes the products and supports all these organizations? Because we know that they do. Is it the pharmacy that's dispensing my medication? Is it my doctor? Or is it the hospital system and the cancer center? whose responsibility is it to introduce us to these groups during different phases of our treatment and our journey?
And from what I'm hearing, you both have chosen to take on that responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if we turn it back to this idea of amplifying the patient voice, love to hear that the support groups are there because they can hear you the way you want to be heard. I don't have a lot of experience with those, but it doesn't sound to me that those support groups are going to be able to amplify that voice to other stakeholders throughout healthcare that need to be hearing it. So what are you guys doing in your organizations and other organizations that you've been affiliated with to amplify that voice? Where's that amplifier pointed at?
Mhm.
And just that, how is it happening?
Yeah. For Tina's Warriors, I recognize we have to take baby steps, right? So for us, we're amplifying the voice within the specialty pharmacy industry. That is step one. All the stakeholders that are involved within this industry, I'm talking about my story. I'm talking about the stories of others. We're bringing to light issues, but we're also bringing to light the good things that have happened and leading through example. So right now for us, it's pointed at the specialty pharmacy industry.
Okay.
So I kind of like where this question is going, because what I was thinking of when you talked about, your patient support, and then I had the same thought. Is healthcare missing a pillar?
Yes.
Yes, there are advocacy groups and there's foundations, but it's, we don't look at us as advocates. We don't look at that just as we look at payers, physicians, pharma, the commercial group, the med affairs group. I know that there are patient advocacy departments at organizations, but I almost feel like maybe that's what needs to be bigger. Because even, with the community that we've built for Parkinson's, there are still plenty of other communities within the Parkinson's realm. And, we do come together, and I do know a lot of them, but it's almost like we need to come together in a different way to really amplify that voice. And I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. As I think more in depth, Chris, about this very question, I have learned that there is an advocacy arm in practically every pharmaceutical company. Little did I know that. I kind of knew it, but I really didn't understand what they did. Now I'm intimately aware of what they do. And their job is community outreach, bringing the patient forward. But I don't think that they are a big voice within their own company. And they should be, I think, one of the leading pillars within the organization. We lead with brand teams, market access teams, the payer access teams. Maybe we need to lead with the advocacy team and work backwards.
Start with the why.
Yeah, start with the why.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's dig a little bit deeper.
Oh boy.
Because that's what we do. It might be a little bit redundant, this question. What is so important that, let's stick with the patient advocacy, okay? Because you're saying before, people need to think a little bit differently, right? And I'm sure I've worked in several pharmaceutical companies, a lot of respect for the patient advocacy groups, a lot focused on access, government policy, general disease awareness. So carrying on with what your last comment, how does the pharmaceutical company need to think differently about the patient advocacy group and what's so important about it?
I believe that whenever a product is getting ready for launch, when they sit around the table, the market access teams or the brand teams and everybody else, they should allow the advocacy team to really lead those discussions and I think the advocacy team also needs to do a lot of homework to get out into the community. I I'm a big proponent for patient ad boards, but the ad boards that they're doing maybe aren't quite right. And so restructuring patient ad boards, doing a patient ad board at every phase through that launch process, not just in the beginning, but every single phase as you bring on your channel partners, as you bring on and have the discussions with the health plans around formulary or non-formulary status or whatever it is, as you work in the market to bring on patient services. The advocacy team should be right there along with the patient focus group, weighing in on every decision and vendor and the materials that you're developing. And right now that's not happening.
And Jessica, I know I've been focusing for the last few minutes on the manufacturer, but as you started out, that your current focus is specialty pharmacy primarily. I love doing multidisciplinary ad boards, focus groups. So what's the ideal ad board for all of healthcare? Because we talked about the launch phases of the drug and all that, and that's very important, clearly. The delivery systems, the providers that are picking the drugs, and not just the drugs, all the support services that you've talked about. Who's in that ad board and what do they need to ask?
That's a
So I don't know if this is going to answer it exactly, but just to build on what you were saying, I'm wondering if like the patient advocacy group or like who they're talking to, what those ad boards look like. Is it going back to, being the patient? The patient advocacy groups, yeah, they might be a patient somewhere. Are they a patient for that disease group that they're working on? And I'm sure it's probably most of the time not. So is it, do company, and I don't, there's probably laws around why they can't do this, but it's almost like if you're going to be in the patient advocacy arm within the company, you must be a patient in that disease group. And then therefore you always have that voice. You're always hopefully at that table, but it's your responsibility of having that understanding of pharma, understanding of healthcare, whatever it may be. And then you're just like we are, like, if I sat in on, but I would hate to just be one company, but do we have, is there a group instead of just, sorry, I'm not like going quickly with this, but there's patient advocacy groups for various different reasons. Do we have patient advocacy groups that are specific for the healthcare industry? And then the healthcare industry taps into those patient advocacy groups, to that patient advocacy group specifically, and has them each sitting on different companies.
I don't know the answer to that, but it is a fantastic idea if it does not exist.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. Why do you think patients are not heard more already? And on the flip side, what are a couple of things that you've already accomplished to help change that?
I feel like they're not brought in enough. I was reading something one time and I happened to compare it to like Nike shoes or something. And any company that has something tangible would never bring something out without testing it amongst their target audience. So, again, I use Nike, I could use any shoe, but like my kids are really into the shoes right now. They would never launch that shoe without having all those kids feed into it. And then that's a lot of their selling point. Like, oh, this athlete helped us create this shoe, or this TikToker helped us do this. But it's something that is more tangible. Whereas a drug, it's not something that I can, you wouldn't think that I would really be able to say like, well, I don't know if I want it to be yellow pill, but maybe blue, or, So I think that's why we're not always asked. But it is we can have just as much of an impact on it as a shoe would.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I could interrupt for a second, again, we're focusing a little bit on the manufacturer and the drug. All the specialty pharmacies, if you're working to try to amplify the voice with specialty pharmacy, that means they're not listening already enough. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to pin them up as not listening at all, right?
Sure.
And you know the dynamic better than I do.
Yeah.
But why aren't they already hearing the patient enough?
I have worked within a lot of different specialty pharmacies. Once again, I think we're an afterthought. They are so concerned about winning the access to the product. They're so concerned about their processes of getting the patients on treatment quick, their operational processes and building the operational processes. They're so concerned about increasing the dispenses, but the patient never comes into that thought. And I will be the first one to say, when I worked and led operations teams, I didn't do that. I didn't say, let's go out and talk to a patient and let's go get some feedback. I never thought about it until I became the patient as I am today. And I just don't think they're aware enough that you can bring a patient in. We want to talk about our stories, and our stories can help you improve your operations, improve the materials you put in the box, improve the way you package the product and put it in the box. Because trust me, I have received packaging for my oral oncolytic that is shameful. But subsequently, the positive to that is I spoke up. I brought it to the attention of the specialty pharmacy and the manufacturer. They sat around, they sat down, talked about it. And my hope is that it's fixed. So I think they forget that we're there and we're a resource.
So once again, like as we started, well-intended and ignorant.
But ignorant, absolutely.
And I'm not putting anybody down. We're all ignorant.
Because we were too. I mean,
Yeah.
Tina and I both say, like, I didn't know any of this until I was actually a patient myself.
And therefore responsible to go out and learn, understand, and change.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about the box. So you guys both have your own boxes,
Yeah.
right? You've got the Hope Kit and the Changing Parkinson's Kit, right? Maybe a lighter, funner question. The first time you packed your own kit, the first Hope Kit that you packed, and the first kit that you packed for Changing Parkinson's, what was going on?
I was so emotional. I sat at the table to write the encouragement card. It's felt like forever. I wanted to write the right words. And I cried. I cried the whole time I wrote the note, the whole time I picked the items to go into the box. And then honestly, when I sealed it and put the label on there, I actually said a little prayer. Because to me, it was, I had promised myself that I was going to give back to someone else. And whoever that person is that received the first kit, I packed, it was so impactful for me that day. And I hope it was impactful for whoever that person is that got it.
So the first kit that I packed, I was really excited because there are no kits for Parkinson's. And so we created it based on my my thought that I used to work for Abbott for Similac baby formula. And if you've ever had a baby and you go to the hospital, you get a diaper bag. And so that's what came to mind. And obviously we don't leave a doctor's office with, a bundle full of joy. You're leaving with a disease. But anyways, that was the whole idea behind it. It's like, what are these like things that we can give people that I wish they knew? And so I was excited to pack it, not just for myself, but on behalf of the Parkinson's community that I have locally that helped me develop it. They all provided their insight into things that they wish they knew. Like we say it constantly. They're like, oh, I wish I would have known to document all the medications that I've been on and all the symptoms that I've had, because in the beginning, you don't realize how many times it changes, and it's going to continue to change. Or how, again, the hospital, thing being in there, or a bottle of water, or the electric toothbrush. I was so excited. So, and then I was even more excited when I handed out my first one. And so it's just, I know I'm helping somebody in a very small way.
Yeah.
I can't help with research or things like that, but if I can make them feel better and help better their life, to let them know there are tools out there, again, as simple as they may be, that you just might not have thought about. So
based on that, and I think we're going to wrap this up pretty soon here today. In this part of your journey, either as a patient or leaders of your organizations, what is the most important thank you you've received?
Oh,
That's really hard. I was immensely humbled last week. I traveled to the headquarters for the National Breast Cancer Foundation. They honored me with an award as a volunteer of the year. That thank you meant a lot, because I'm in my little corner of the world within our industry, talking about change, having a call to action to bring the change makers to the table. And this outside organization actually heard what I was doing, and they rewarded not just me, but the entire group of people that have poured their hearts into this. And I think that for me has been validation that what we're doing matters, and what we do is touching the lives of others and bringing joy, even if it is for one moment when they open up that box.
It's going to be hard to pick one, because I have more comments from the podcast because I haven't figured out a way to deliver as many kits like this amazing person. So I'm learning from her. But from the podcast standpoint, I get hundreds. Our team gets hundreds of comments and emails about, thank you, I do not feel alone anymore. And that is one of the most powerful messages, because that is the one thing that we all say is, I just feel like I'm alone. But the one thing that does stick out in my head, it was the first out-of-town conference I went to. The Michael J. Fox Foundation has, has these conferences for patients. And because I was always partnering with them, they were like, yeah, we'd love for you to have a table and hand out your kits. And so I did that in Florida last year. And this woman came running up to me, and I'm like, do I know her? And she's like, Jessica. She's like, what are you doing here? You live in Ohio. I'm like, I'm sorry, who are you?
Oh.
And she's like, we watch you every day.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It was like, I'm like,
how
what?
Heartwarming.
You don't think about that. And I'm like, really? And she's like, let me get my husband. She's like, whatever his name was. And she's like, this is her. This is who we watch on YouTube. And that was really powerful, because I didn't realize, I knew I was reaching people globally, but for them to react that way and to say I watch your podcast every week. I wait for it to come out so I can learn. And again, just feel that comfort, because a lot of people don't have a community. That's been the best. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And if you guys aren't tearing, I am. So I'm very appreciative for being here. Is there anything else that I should have asked?
Well, today we have a huge Hope Kit event that we are doing, the Tina's Warriors group. We are going to send 800 Hope Kits to women across the country who are undergoing cancer treatment. And so that's 800 battles that we are going to bring some joy into their lives. And that's happening today. And we're just incredibly thankful for everyone who has come together to support this cause.
That's all. I mean, I don't have anything else. I'm just so excited for this one and for the event. And I really do appreciate you asking us these questions, because we don't always go in depth on ourselves. And I think this actually made me realize and think about a lot of future things that we should consider. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate you digging deep and helping us also really understand some of the areas we may need to work on, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this issue about advocacy and bringing them to the forefront when we talk about it, but now I'm really thinking we've got to get a little louder about that ask. So,
and I want to thank you for letting me learn here and actually listen to the patient.
Great.
Thank
you so much. Thank you for coming, and we will see you all next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
That was awesome.